Well, if you can't make it down to Mexico for some sultry flavors, Mexico has been brought to us here in Charleston at the new Maya restaurant located on King Street. And I'm sitting with executive chef Brett Riley. I want to thank you so much for having us here and for this beautiful spread that you've created for us. I want to get into some of these dishes because they are truly authentic Mexican cuisine. But you realize you're filling a void that we've had here in the Holy City in terms of Mexican food.
I'm figuring that out now. Yeah, it's good to be here, and it's good to be somewhere where it's kind of a new playing field, new grounds to get going.
It is, and this is part of Steve Palmer's restaurant group. We've had him on the show many, many times. Just down the street is Oku, and so this is just yet another incarnation of some of the wonderful things that he's doing. But your study in Mexican cuisine to create these beautiful dishes came from a cultivation that you got up north.
Yes. So I've been to Mexico, but that was more of a spiritual journey. My culinary journey with Mexican cuisine was in New York City. So I went to New York City and I wound up having to kind of go back to a sous position, and someone took me under their wing, and I went into Dos Caminos under Chef Jose Quinones. And I started to get a real crash course in ingredients and a lot of the preparation and a lot of what it was. And it was like a lot all at once. And then as I started moving through the ranks in the kitchen, I went from restaurant to restaurant and acquired a lot more knowledge along my way in making moles and the nixtamal process and sourcing corn and how to get and where to get all of the ingredients.
And what I like here, though, is that you have a representation. Mexican cuisine is complex. It varies along a wide spectrum of flavors, from meats to seafood to all kinds of things. You have a little bit of the Low Country represented as well. But maybe we could go around some of these dishes and you can tell me more about them individually and kind of where they come from.
Here we did just a tuna, kind of a crudo. It's a raw tuna that's tossed with some guajillo oil, finished with a salsa macha. I acidulate it and then season it with piloncillo, which is like a raw sugar, and a little salt. And that's it.
And you know, some of these ingredients, so much goes into something so small, whether it is the mole or it's another sauce that you use. And like you say, you really try to pack in so many different flavors that you're coaxing out something that is truly complex. Mexican cuisine is so unlike anything else. Would you agree?
Yes, it's definitely a labor of love. There's a lot of technique, a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of ingredients that are kind of rendered down to make a lot of this.
And some really interesting ingredients. So let's go to the mole, shall we? So this plate would be a representation of what would be in a typical mole, or at least some of the ingredients. What goes into it?
The mole would have a lot of nuts, seeds, spices, of course, chilies, vegetables, and it's about trying to get them all to work together to create one flavor so that it's not overpowered by any one thing. So there's definitely a lot that goes in it.
And speaking of complex things, you were talking about the nixtamal. It's a nixtamalization process, kind of a mouthful really when you think about it, but this is where you derive various corn products. So tell us a little bit about going from kernel to the dough that you have over there.
So this is a field corn. This is bolita amarilla. This is a yellow corn. It's allowed to dry on the stalk, and then it's harvested. And to cook it, you have to create an alkaline. So use shaved limestone, like calcium hydroxide. So you would put a weight amount of that to the corn, and in that process, boiling it, that will actually cook the corn, and it unlocks the nutrients and the nutritional value, and it's allowed to steep, and now what you have is hominy. So if you were to grind it up and let it dry out, you've got grits. Then you run it through a stone mill, water is needed, a little salt at the end, and you end up with masa. So this is pressed into tortillas. I use it to thicken sauces. So kind of it's used in this dish almost like roux to thicken something. I also make the tempura for our fish out of that. So our fish tacos and anything that comes out of that fryer is gluten-free.
So you really have something for all taste buds. Beautiful dining room. There's also a great outdoor patio in the back with a full bar back there as well. Come with your friends. I want to thank you so much for having us here, and congratulations on the opening of Maya.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for us on this edition of Food Friday. We'll see you back here next week.